Hey everyone, welcome to the New Populist. I'm Dave Brown. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Well, Christmas is right around the corner. The media is ramping up this hysteria about the Omicron variant. And what is actually the truth? Are we in danger from this Omicron variant? Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I am a consumer of mainstream media news, and I'm following their sources, their information to tell me whether or not I should be scared. Now, stick with me here because I have two articles that say two very different things, and if we're critical thinkers, we will see that there is a discrepancy here. Things are in contradiction and begs the question, what exactly is the truth? Now, I have this article from NPR, and NPR is an approved mainstream media news source. So, by definition, this has to be truthful. This is not Fox News or Breitbart. This is NPR, an approved source of news from the mainstream media. So, what does NPR say about this variant in South Africa, Omicron? Omicron may be less severe in South Africa. That may not be the case for the US. It's been about a month since scientists first detected the highly mutated coronavirus variant dubbed Omicron. Since then, scientists have come to learn that Omicron spreads faster than the Delta variant and is the quickest spreading variant the world has yet faced. It also has a huge ability to bypass immune protection and cause breakthrough infections. Very scary stuff. It goes on. The open-ended question right now centers on Omicron severity. Does Omicron cause milder disease compared to previous variants? Does it thereby lower the risk of severe disease and hospitalization? There's no doubt everyone wants this to be the case, and some recent data out of South Africa sure makes it look like this might be the case. Researchers there have found that South Africans infected with Omicron are on average less likely to end up in the hospital, and they also appear to recover more quickly from illness compared to the other variants. However, as many scientists have been pointing out, that evidence from South Africa could be misleading. The Omicron variant may end up acting differently in the US. So we have this good news from South Africa that this variant Omicron, while more contagious, is less virulent. Less people are going to the hospital. And if they do go to the hospital, they're released very quickly. So this should be good news, but of course, we know the media does not want to let this go, this issue of the pandemic. They want to keep pushing it. So they have to find out how they can make it that in the United States, it could be worse. So let's continue with this article. So why is South Africa having a better time with Omicron? It says, South Africans have built up significant COVID immunity. As a country, South Africa has already gone through 3 massive surges as vaccination rates that remained low compared to the US and Europe. So while only about a quarter of South Africans have been vaccinated when Omicron finally arrived, the vast majority of residents had likely already been infected with previous variants of SARS-CoV-2. And scientists have predicted this based on the excess mortality rate observed in the country through the pandemic. Given this history, scientists say most South Africans have already probably had some level of immune protection generated by these prior infections. So, unlike the United States, South Africa was not vaccinated, so people were just exposed to the virus and got natural immunity. Omicron enters a South African population with considerably more immunity than in prior SARS-CoV-2 variant, concluded Dr. Robi Bhattacharya, an infectious disease specialist, and epidemiologist William Hanage in a recent paper published online. In other words, There are very few South Africans who have never been exposed to the coronavirus, either through vaccine or natural infection. That means the Omicron infections happening in South Africa aren't, for the most part, primary infections, but rather secondary infections, also known as reinfections. So most people there have been exposed to the coronavirus. And because of that, they're arguing that the issue in South Africa is so mild because people in these reinfections, they're just getting runny noses, they're getting a sore throat, and it's moving on pretty quickly. And so that seems to be an argument for natural immunity, right? Because that's preventing the severity of disease and keeping people out of the hospital. So what percentage of South Africa has some level of immune protection? Well, they go on to say, based off of their data, that approximately 80% of South Africans, may have had COVID and some sort of natural immunity. And what about the United States? Because that's the big question. If 80% of South Africans had COVID, and that means there's 20% that didn't have a vaccine or COVID infection, what does that mean for the United States as far as how many people in the US have either had COVID or a COVID vaccination? Well, the article says that approximately 20% of Americans still had neither a vaccine nor a prior infection. Well, I'm looking at that data going, 80% of South Africans have had infection or may have had infection, and 20% of Americans have not had infection or vaccine, which means that about 80% of Americans have had either the vaccine or been naturally had the infection, had natural immunity. Does that not mean that South Africa and the United States as a percentage are roughly the same, around 80%? Would that not mean that we should see something similar in the United States as South Africa? The numbers are the same, right? But I have one more caveat to this, which kind of blows up their argument that the United States should be so much worse. And this is this. From the CDC and from our CDC director, Rochelle Walensky. New CDC study, vaccination offers higher protection than previous COVID-19 infection. And the director in her tweet here says vaccination offers higher protection against severe disease than prior infection. Those unvaccinated and had a recent infection were 5 times more likely to have COVID-19 than those recently fully vaccinated without prior infection. So this study here that she's referencing is actually a study from Kentucky. Now, this study was ripped apart by a lot of people online for being very, very flawed. And in the study itself, it actually admitted that the study was flawed. But if the director of the CDC is going to use it, I'm supposed to say, okay, you're right. Then it must be true. So by their logic then, if the vaccine offers longer lasting immunity than infection, if it's more durable and you're much less likely to have severe disease if you've been vaccinated versus natural infection, if over 60% of our country is vaccinated and 20% have had natural infection versus South Africa, which had only 25% vaccination and then approximately 55% had natural infection, if the vaccine works better, provides more durable protection provides protection against severe disease, and provides protection against being reinfected, then not only should we do as well as South Africa, we should do better, right? That's what their own information says. And so we see the problem here. If we follow their logic, we should be just fine in the United States. Just one problem. They do not want to let go of this pandemic for political reasons. And so they're caught doing this little dance where they're jumping back and forth, trying to scare you, trying to prolong the pandemic, But at the same time, say that vaccines are working, but wait a second, South Africa has natural immunity. They did great, but what do we do? And there's the problem. When you're not being honest, it's so easy to catch these inconsistencies and lies. And we can do it just by reading their approved sources. So we don't have to go to Breitbart or Fox News or some unapproved news source to find these contradictions. We can find these contradictions alive within their own approved mainstream media sources. And so the question, how will the United States do? Well, if the vaccine works as well as they say it does, then we should be just fine. And here's the thing, though. If the vaccine doesn't work as well as natural immunity, then there is that possibility that we actually do a little worse than South Africa. So if that happens, you know what they're going to do, and we all know what they're going to do. They're going to blame the unvaccinated. And that's their scapegoat if things don't go their way. If things do really, really well, they'll praise the vaccine. And if things don't go so well, they will blame the unvaccinated. That's the game we're playing. It's unfortunate. I hate seeing it. It shouldn't be happening, but that's what we're dealing with, and that's our reality. And as I said in my last video, I think they want to use this Omicron variant and the fear mongering to provide momentum into changing voting laws to make them permanent at a national level, which is why they dropped the Build Back Better stuff, and now they're focusing on voting bills and voting rights because they want to use this Omicron thing to gain support for making things like mail-in voting a permanent features of our elections going forward. And if that happens, I think we all can sort of surmise that that is not good for Republicans and our chances to make sure that our elections are fair and that there aren't any sort of malfeasance and shenanigans going on. So keep an eye on that. Let's see what happens after the holidays. That's in January. That's when we're really going to see what their plan is for trying to curtail our freedoms and our rights. So pay attention. That's it for now. Again, if you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe. And shameless plug, I am the co-author of the book, Black and White, How the Left is Destroying the Dream of Martin Luther King and Our Founding Fathers. If you want a discussion about race from a right-leaning, balanced viewpoint, check it out. I talk about some personal stories and things that I've experienced as a person who is biracial in this country in a less hysterical way and a way that embraces the original intent of Martin Luther King, which is for us all to live together in peace and harmony. And unfortunately, groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa have turned it all on its head, and we're moving in that wrong direction. And my goal is to get us back into that right direction where we're not blaming other people for being racist because they're white, and we're not using critical race theory. So if you're interested in that, pick up a copy. It's available on Amazon, and there is a link in the description. Until next time, take care.